No. I mean, I can. It wouldn't be very
12
smart.
months ago.
I will have my own room if y'all
Wouldn't
want
be
to
very
cuddle up
smart.
in a king-size bed with me.
I'll probably get my own room.
Well, Jen and Autumn can cuddle up with me if that's what they need to do. Y'all can get your own rooms.
Oh.
Y'all can get a room together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My wife's going to come too, so it's going to be great.
Sounds like a good time for you. Sounds like a good time for you. It does.
I'll probably get kicked out of the room for shitting. Can you imagine them being in there and me saying, "Oh, guys, I got the bubble guts. I got to go in here."
Could you imagine waking up with your coffee and having a foursome waiting on you? If you had all the wives in there?
I couldn't do it.
That's a good 9 a.m. coffee right there.
Yeah.
But then what if I had the bubble guts? I had to get more shit.
You probably will.
Oh, I know I will. You know I am after I fly. I get the bubble guts after I fly. I get the bubble guts after I fly. Bubble guts, bubble guts, bubble guts, bubble guts.
I've never even heard that term until now. Now I've heard it 5 times.
The other thing I like to say is a flaming backdoor trots. You ever see a guy walking like trying to keep it from... Anyway.
Yeah, I've been that guy.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bigg Vinny, and this is Jerry Blake, and this is Jeff Suter over here.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking to you about the Refined Life podcast. We've been let know by a gracious fan that we're 50 years old, which is 10 years older than me, and we shouldn't be trying to make podcasts. But guess what? We don't give a shit, and we're going to make a podcast anyways. You know why? Because we got microphones, so we're going to make you a podcast, and you can either choose to listen or choose to not listen. We don't care. We love you anyways. And if we don't love you, well, then you're probably an alien. You probably come from the planet Klopasa. You can cut that out.
Yeah. I don't think you will, but
Yeah.
I
Anyway.
feel like every time you say you should cut that out, that it winds up being a reel on Suter's page.
Don't cut it out. Leave it in there. You know why? Because freaking love you. That's why.
I thought we were actually going to go there this time.
I did too, only because of his definition of the word earlier.
Yes, because he's
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a different.
He told
episode.
me today that he didn't believe in cuss words. Why?
Well, because society made cuss words cuss words.
I agree with that.
None of these cuss words were even a thing, right? I mean, there was no such thing as a cuss word. In fact, what they're trying to in the religious world, which I am a huge Jesus Christ lover and believer, but there's no words that are selected out and said, "Hey, these words right here are the bad words, and these words right here are okay." It's all about how you use the words, what you're using the words for. If you're threatening somebody, if you're talking bad about somebody, being mean to somebody, then that makes it a curse word. But to curse somebody means to wish bad upon them. Like, hope your hair hurts. You know what I mean? Like, what if your hair hurt and you got get a haircut and it hurt? That sucks, right?
It was a strange thing.
Anyways, that's a curse.
I hope your hair hurts.
I'm trying to feel that
No,
right now.
like think about it. If your hair
People
hurt,
tell me that all the time.
think about when you got it cut. If your hair hurt and you had feelings inside there. Maybe it does.
Yeah,
We've
that
just
would-
gotten so used to
that
getting
would
it
suck.
cut. Because when Mike's son got his haircut the first time, he cried.
You told me where some of these words came from.
So like a lot of the cuss words we use are not even really cuss words.
Now,
So-
I haven't looked this up to see if he's right or not.
So no,
I'm just
this hasn't
taking
been
it.
verified.
Well, you can.
We're just taking him at his word.
Yeah.
So like the word shit stood for store high in transit. So if you put you're in a ship and it's raining outside and you can't go dump stuff over, you put it underneath the bottom down here, it's going to rise up and you're going to smell it the whole time. But if you put it at the top, it's just going to rise to the top because that heated air and stuff like that raise up. Now, the only thing I see in problem with that is store high in transit is, well, if you get rocky on that ship, next thing you know, whoosh,
Or a leak.
well, you took a leak.
No, a leak
Yeah.
in your storage upstairs.
Yeah, that would be bad.
It'd be real bad.
But I don't know if it was upstairs. I think everybody was in the hull of the ship. Anyways, so shit is store high in transit. The word fuck, which I don't normally say, but it is an acronym for foreign lawful carnal knowledge, or fornication under consent of the king. So it's actually an acronym. But we started using it as a word. Well, all these 4-letter words that were being used made you seem uneducated. So your parents and stuff like that, you'll go to hell using those bad words,
So
So society deemed these things as such. And over the years, we accepted that and said, hey, those words are bad. We shouldn't say them because you go to hell if you say those words, even though those words didn't even exist when the Bible came out. When people were when Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and all those guys were writing Bibles.
Now I just want to point out, as he said all that, this comes from the same man that thought AI was a word.
Well, I'm really good with the Bible, and I'm really bad with AI. So you can check my facts. You can fact check me. I don't care. We're in the modern day of fact checking. But
I'm still processing fuck.
Yeah.
I'm still processing that. So,
Bet you've been processing that for a while.
because it's part of the meaning.
I heard
We
you were
could
pretty
use
quick
it.
at it.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
So part of the meaning we use it for actually fits the acronym, the
Right.
second acronym you gave. It kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause
Right,
You said
yeah.
fornicate.
Fornication under consent
Fornication
of the king.
under consent of the king.
Yeah, and apparently it was when I don't know which king it was, but he was trying to make super soldiers, like many kingdoms and people have tried to do, powers have tried to do. So they would take the strongest men and the strongest women and make them mate together, even if they were married to other people. So they would be fornication under consent of the king because they wanted to create an offspring that was bigger and stronger. So fornication under consent of the king.
Which is where we apparently took that acronym and ran with it.
Yeah, and for unlawful carnal
With consent
knowledge.
of no one.
I'm not sure the actual definition of for unlawful carnal knowledge.
I'm sure someone will comment below and let you know
And it's okay
if you're
if they do.
wrong.
And just know we're not educated. We're not intelligent.
Yeah.
We're 50. And trying
I
to
don't
make
claim to be. What I
podcasts,
claim to
so-
be is good at talking to people, which has led me
Well,
to great places in life.
I wouldn't think that you would just openly claim to be intelligent wearing overalls. I think
Yeah.
that would be
Although most of the millionaires and billionaires I've met throughout the years at some point wear them overalls.
at some point.
Yeah.
Just some random point.
Yeah, I mean, they
Like,
just throw
I
them
feel like
on.
a lot of people have worn overalls at some point.
Yeah. But I know
Most of us were probably
think
three.
about some of the
but
guys we know, that own these blue collar companies that are huge. They wear overalls every day. Think about Daryl.
that's true.
If you met Daryl, you'd be like, man, this guy ain't got a pot to piss in. And then
But
when you
he's
get to
got
talk to him,
8. He's got 8
8
pots to piss in.
He's pissed in all 8 of them.
At the same time.
Every one of them are businesses that are worth about $100 million a piece. And this guy is, if you met him, you'd be like, he's got, is this old man with a big old beard hanging down to here, and he likes to go. He took us out swamp buggy riding, hunting for alligators and big old, what were they, boa constrictors or
Yeah, we
pythons?
found a boa.
Yeah,
Oof.
and
It was in a house in a swamp.
I left there. And that same night, we went down to the rock and roll bar and partied with Chris Kirkpatrick and Joey Fatone.
Listen, man,
And,
you don't need to be name dropping. We got people out there listening that used to have Paris Hilton's phone number.
Oh, that's true. Hey, but the thing is we've already
You'll
talked
be
about
name
that on the
dropping
last
like that.
podcast.
Yeah.
That was part of the last podcast, if you remember, or one of the last 2. Anyway, the point is like we decided these words were the way they are. Now, I think the part that is supported in the Bible is where it says that you are supposed to follow like the way of the land, or the laws of the land, the law, So I think because it's become that unaccepted part of society. So the reason I didn't cuss and really don't cuss a whole lot is because I wouldn't have done that in front of my grandmother, because my grandmother didn't like it. So out of respect for her, I purposely didn't use those words, even though with me and my buddies sitting around, we might say some cuss words, this and that. I've never been a big cussing kind of person. But it's to me, it's almost a cooler thing that you would cuss with you and your buddies because you feel comfortable. But when you get around somebody you respect, it's like people say, oh, you changed the way you are around somebody else. I'm like, it's not that I changed the way I am. It's just that I respect that person's beliefs and that person's views and that person, my grandmother, who was one of the greatest influences in my life. I respect her enough to not do something that makes her uncomfortable or makes her think bad of me. Because, not think bad of me, but just her whole thing would be like, you're not supposed to cuss because that's the way she was raised and that's what she believed. Now,
Well,
she
dude,
did she did say shit, fire, and save matches. Okay? So,
Okay.
I mean, just leave that back.
It's really
on that.
weird because the way people look at it, because it's no different than if your buddy, doesn't wear shoes in his house and you do.
Yeah.
You still, out of respect, you just take your shoes off. It's this other person's
Absolutely.
personality or whatever they're doing, that you just honor that. But I feel like that we're losing that a lot in this society. We're so desperate to, for you to accept me the way I am,
Right.
that you don't give on any
Yeah. No,
element
I
or
think-
understand it. And I think that our 50-year-old group, we're taught something a little bit different.
Yeah.
Of that you had respect for other people.
Yeah.
And and if someone else didn't live that way, you didn't push your lifestyle on
Yeah.
them.
And I think, whenever I look at it, I always want to be respectful of other people's views, other people's opinions, as long as it doesn't push away and they don't push away my views and my opinions. You know what I mean? So I'm open to listening and having a debate, talking with anybody about the way they feel, the way they view whether it's their religion, their sexual orientation, any of that kind of stuff. I'm more than happy to sit down and have a copacetic conversation and be nice to each other. And
Man, another big word for him
hey,
tonight.
you know,
Nailed it.
did I use it right?
I think
did.
so.
Copacetic conversation.
I thought he was going to say Copenhagen. I couldn't.
Well, that's a whole different kind of thing. You know, you got to talk like this. But anyways, I just think that you should always be open to and be respectful to other people and their beliefs and their views, because, you know, and this kind of brings us to why this meant something to me today. He sent me this video and he said, "I love your thoughts on this video."
Now, hang on. I sent him this video, and then I called him. And you remember the one episode where we talked about, like, when you're a happy person, how it's very noticeable when they're not happy?
Yeah.
Vinny's always happy, and he always answers the phone either hello, or he's like, hey, blah, 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 and he just immediately goes in. And I called him today, and he goes, hello. And I was like,
I had just watched the video and I was like, going through my
mind. Dude, how you doing? Is everything okay? And he was like, I just watched that video. And I was like, oh, and this leads into
So I watched this video, and it's basically it's a preacher, a pastor, who is literally saying, beware of Jelly Roll, you know. Now, some of us have met Jelly Roll, we've been around him, great guy, you know, has completely changed his life. He's working towards doing, you know, great things. He has been very open about his love for Jesus Christ. He's been very open about communicating that if it wasn't for Jesus, if it wasn't for God, that he would have probably not be alive right now.
Right.
And that he is in the process of changing the things that he was in his past. So in this video, Jelly Roll basically goes in there and starts talking about Jesus and how Jesus hung out with guys, you know, the disciples. Some of those guys were not great dudes, you know, but he believed in them, and they were men that could be there with him and be beside him and, you know, help fight this battle that he was fighting. He talked about, you know, when he said, you know, let them without sin cast the first stone, and he was protecting a town whore, you know, and he said, you know, let him cast the first stone. The guy, the pastor's whole thing was, what he didn't say was, after that, he said, go and sin no more. I'm like, but if he's saying he's bettered his life and he's changed the way he used to do stuff, then don't you think that that's part of the message, is that he did do that? So what made me upset is, like, he goes into this whole thing about how Jelly Roll's a false prophet and all these people are going to start believing that he's this and he's that and he's really the devil's tool, and like all these things he was saying. I was just like, okay, guy, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I mean, you know, if he's going to talk about the Bible, I do understand following through and telling the next passage. However, you're looking at one clip from one interview that you saw on TikTok, and you're trying to say that's the way this guy believes in everything. I said, what he did was, he said that if Jesus was here today, he would probably be hanging out with the losers and the outcasts and the people, because that's what he did.
Yeah.
He went around and he wanted to go to people that needed salvation, that needed to be saved. Back then, there was no such thing as a Christian, right? Because Jesus Christ hadn't died yet. You couldn't be a Christian if Jesus Christ hadn't died on the cross yet.
Yeah.
So when people were like, well, all these religions are way older than Christianity. They're way older than the word Christianity. But being a Christian and being, you know, of God, you know, when Jesus Christ came here 2,000 and whatever years ago, you know, that's when Christianity started, because that's after Jesus Christ came to the earth and died for our sins.
Yeah.
So what really got me, and when I was explaining it to Jared, I said, you're looking at this pastor, and we don't know his past. I don't know what he's been through. I don't know if he came from rough beginnings or whatever. But the way he talked was as a guy that probably went to some kind of school, Bible college, this and that. And so his whole life has been, grew up in the church, went to Bible college. Now he's a preacher for some church that's probably 1,000+ people. And now he's trying to come on and battle Jelly Roll, who has no clue who this guy is. But he's going on here to say, and on there, he's like, guys, I just don't want you to fall for these false prophets. And he's like half crying. And I'm like, it just bugged me, because I'm like, dude, this is a guy who has a massive platform that is openly proclaiming the name of Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior by name, not saying the big guy upstairs or the big man help me, or, you know, the creator, or not using any of those slang terms that people use now to seem religious.
Yeah.
He's openly saying, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And so it really bugged me that you're attacking this guy and trying to say he's a false prophet and all this other stuff, and you're not considering that, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, he was in jail.
Right.
You know, as a kid, he was in juvenile delinquency things. Like he was in there for dope dealing and all these other things that he did. You know, you're not considering that his walk of life and where he's at in his Christian walk is different than yours. So just the fact that he has this massive platform and is willing to say, and that's what he said. He goes, and he broke the first commandment, which says, "Thou shalt not have any other god before me." And I'm like, he was like, he's trying to make his own version of Jesus. I'm like, nope. Hey, I was like, no, he didn't. I said, he didn't make his own version of Jesus Christ. He got his version of Jesus Christ from the Bible. He read scripture. He clearly knew there's only 4 books, in the Bible that Jesus Christ actually speaks in, as with the red letters,
Right. Yeah.
So he knows that. He gives you an exact, definition of something that happened in the Bible that was real to him, that was his personal experience with the exact same Jesus Christ that you read about. But his interpretation is a little different than yours because his perspective from life has been different than yours. So you're trying to judge this guy and say he's a false prophet and beware of Jelly Roll and crying to the almost like literally like voice cracking, talking to people about not trusting Jelly Roll and I'm like, listen, the guy's rough around the edges. I get it. But he's coming through this journey of becoming a Christian, and you're going to stop him dead in his tracks by being that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about at the beginning of it, that kind of guy, like you can educate somebody on fulfilling the true word of God without belittling their experience and where they're at. And that's where I had the problem is like this dude, being that way, he's not going to change the way Jelly Roll is. Jelly Roll is going to be Jelly Roll no matter what. But as a new Christian, if I was a guy that a couple years ago, man, I was slinging dope and all this, and I didn't become a star, but I found Jesus Christ. And I started talking to people about Jesus. And all of a sudden, this pastor hears me one time saying, it's like, no, that's not what he said, blah, blah, blah. And just starts saying all this stuff and telling me I'm wrong and berating me in front of people. And this guy goes far enough to get on the internet and starts the video by going, well, guys, I really battled if I should do this or not because I know it's going to make some people mad at me because, I know that he's got a lot of fans. I'm like, he spent the first 3 minutes of the video explaining how upset people were going to be that he was doing the video.
Yeah.
But I felt called that I have to be the one
But
to do it.
So I think that's where it starts to hit me.
Yeah.
Is first of all, that video that we're talking about where Jelly Roll's talking about the
Yeah.
disciples and stuff, I've only saw that on TikTok. I have seen that nowhere else.
Yeah.
But TikTok. And so my first thought is, if you're all that high and mighty of a pastor, the hell you doing scrolling on TikTok? You know what I mean? Like half the time I'm looking at like this is just garbage. I don't know why I should not be doing. It's just garbage.
Yeah.
So it's like out of all the things you could be spending your time on, you as a pastor is like, well, I was just scrolling through TikTok and I found Jelly Roll on here, and then you move on to go. So had he seen that guy on the street that you're talking about?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have made a big deal out of that. He only made a big deal out of it. I'm sorry, but I think it's very factual because I know a lot of really good men, a lot of really good pastors, and I don't see them trolling TikTok in order to find victims that are far more famous than them to talk crap about. So I can't help but think, dude, you really thought about this for a minute, really? And by the way, I don't know if he brought up praying for it or not, but like
No,
I can't understand the thought that like anywhere in the Bible can you think about this, can you picture Jesus even having a TikTok account, first of all? If Jesus was here right now, would he have a
scroll. He was scrolling a whole different way.
Say Peter signed him up for it, though. Say Peter made the account, and now
He's
Jesus
like, you need
has
to
a
get this so
TikTok
that you
account.
can get to more people. Yeah.
And then Peter found Jelly Roll, and he's like, Jesus, look what Jelly Roll's saying about you. Do you think that Jesus would be like, whoa, stop everything? I got to tell the world.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't see it. And it's one of the, you guys obviously know that I hate social media. But that's part of my issues with it is that whatever I could say on social media to say what I feel about Jesus or orphans or anything it is that I feel passionate about, right? Mm-hmm. I can do hardly any good at all. I might be able to get in front of a couple million people. But what we did at the fountains the other night, is far, far more effective. Yeah. Far, far more effective. If I can get in front of someone and talk to them and love them, you can start to change a life there. Yeah. But like just throwing out these little clips. And so I can't help. And once again, I go back to my favorite pastors and the ones that I look up to the most. They're not out on social media telling everybody about everything, and they certainly aren't picking fights with Jelly Roll. Yeah. when Vinny first started talking to me about it, what got me the most is he said everyone is at a different phase of their walk.
Yeah.
And when I thought about that, I was like, when I first started coming back around to God, I had to, first of all, take on a God in my head, a God that loved everyone and that I was worthy of his love.
Right.
And so I had to look at that and go from being an addict, alcoholic, thief, jail, all these different things that I had done. I had to go, I'm still worthy of God's love, that he created me. I'm a son, right? Child. And when you have to accept that, your view on Jesus or God might be a little skewed because it's your intro into it, right? And so I thought about like how harsh Jelly was in that interview, and I thought, some of the stuff Jelly's saying doesn't really line up necessarily.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I was coming fresh out of rehab and I was just giving God a chance again, what I would tell you was very different. In the same regard, if you look up Charlie Daniels or Johnny Cash and look at the beginning of their career and hear them talk about God versus as they aged before they died and they talked about God, it was a much more refined approach. It was much more they had learned and they knew they had a different relationship with God, and it wasn't so harsh. You know, and even like Vinny was saying, so Jelly has changed a lot about his life. And I think a lot of Christians get caught up in looking at people and what they're doing wrong without looking at what they've changed so far.
That's right.
Because I think that you have to keep growing with it. There's several things that I wasn't convicted of 4 years ago that this year I am. That this year I'm going, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And much more like the more I want to help people and want to work with people, I realize I got to clean things up.
Becoming better, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what this life is,
Right, and you can't take it and look at it and go, well, this guy was a cocaine addict, and now he's a pastor. I mean, like, some people do that. Some people, like, it's
my
just
dad
a
was black
complete...
tar heroin and became a pastor and
but
saved.
that is not most.
Bring a lot of people to Jesus,
That is not most. And,
but you think about this. What Jelly Roll is doing is he's going out there and he's talking to a group of people that pastor
will never touch.
Will never be able to talk to because
he's the gateway.
Yeah.
It's the way we talk about it when we go to prison or anything else.
He might be the one that talks about Jesus and some guy that's sitting there with a gun in his hand thinking, I might take it out today. He might say, let me go read about this Jesus character. I've heard about him, I've heard about him a whole lot, but I never really read and got into it. And then all of a sudden they get into it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, And so what he's out there doing. And I don't care, regardless of what his actual daily walk is, what his sins are, any of the other stuff, he has openly given Jesus Christ and God the glory for where he's become in life. It doesn't mean that he's 100% better, perfect all the time. It just means that in his walk, he is discovered.
And to shame that.
Yeah, to shame it. That's the problem that I had with it.
I think what I'm hearing, my first instinct was the pastor is putting his own clout, his own likes, his own following on social media ahead of the actual word, ahead of his congregation and whoever he was talking to. I hold the opinion he did this for attention.
Agreed.
That's 100%. And what he could have done was kind of said, hey, there's this guy out there named Jelly Roll. I didn't really know who he was, but I started, people started sending stuff to me or whatever. And he did this interview, and you could show the interview and be like, I think it's awesome that he's talking about Jesus, that he has this platform and everything else. But I want to continue the rest of this message and what needs to be also known. If he did it that way, you're a guy that's educated in Christianity, that's in the Bible, there's everything, that's not berating this new Christian, or not necessarily a new Christian, but a new, he's operating as a Christian now. He might have been reading the Bible his whole life. He might have been in church his whole life. Everything else. If you listen to his song on the new record, it's called "I'm Going to Church." And it's like, I ain't headed to the cigarette store. I ain't headed, to get drunk. I ain't headed to do this, all this other stuff. He's like, I'm just headed to church. Yeah. But because people look at him and they view him with the tattoos on his face and all the stuff that he's done, he's like, actually, I'm headed to church, But his church is going out to the middle of the woods and talking with God and being with God, and that's kind of his version of church. And I'm not saying that makes anything else right either. But, excuse me, what I am saying is that this guy is going to torch people that we're going to give this power and say, look, this is a guy that's being healed, is in the process of being healed. Like you said, the journey of what he's going through and what he's trying to become. This is just a little bump on the road. So, God says Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, right? That's what it says in the Bible. So that doesn't mean the path is going to be straight. You know what I mean? So you're thinking about your way to heaven. It's like, oh, I was born and raised Christian, and I've been a Christian. Everything's been great, and I went to Bible college, and I've been a Christian, and then bam, I've got five generations sitting around me at my casket, and then I die, and I go straight up to heaven. That's true for some people. Some people have that walk with God. Other people say, okay, well, I was born into a really bad situation, and then I got into juvenile delinquency, and then I found God, and I kind of got on the path for a little bit, but then I got addicted to cocaine, and I went way over here on this side, and your path looks like this.
Yeah.
It's crooked. But it leads you
Why
back
can't
to
talk about me like that?
Yeah, I was talking about Jared. But I'm saying it leads you to the same place. And that's the beauty of God, the forgiveness, the fact that he did send Jesus Christ to die for us is he knew that we weren't going to be perfect. Even when Jesus was on the cross, tattered and torn and, crucified, he was like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And that is the Jesus that Jelly Roll was talking about.
Yeah.
It's not the Jesus that, well, you've been perfect. Welcome to heaven. You know, it's the reason he died wasn't for the person that messes up a little. I mean, it was for the people that are going to mess up big in their life. It was for the people that are going to commit sins, regardless if your sin is a small sin, a big sin, whatever you consider it, because in the eyes of God, sin is sin, right?
Sin, yeah.
Outside of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
There's another side too, is I feel like that anytime someone starts challenging someone else's faith or Christianity, and both of you are saying that you believe in the Bible, if you're not bringing the Bible into this conversation, then you're doing nothing. You're just arguing over stuff. Yeah. I don't see. I mean, like one of the greatest things that me and my wife did, and it got rid of so many arguments, is we decided that if we were getting into an argument, we were going to stop and seek out what the Bible said about that.
Yeah.
Because we both agreed, whatever that was. And then it took the power out of the argument because it no longer mattered if you were right or I was right or who was right. Both of us usually would look at it and be like, I don't like what that says at all, but I'm going to do it. And it would, it resolves things.
And that's one of the things too that, there's a reason we have so many denominations in Christianity, right?
That's right.
Because you got these people that think it's oneness, and these people that think it's Trinity, and these people that think you should sing, and these people that think you shouldn't play instruments, or you should play instruments. These people, all these different, congregations, you should be baptized if you want to truly be saved. You can be saved just by by confessing with your tongue. Like all these conflicting things that happen because of people's interpretations. Which is, I think it's not even a bad thing. I think it's good that there's different types of churches for different people. At the end of the day, if you're learning about Jesus Christ, you believe that he died on the cross for you, that's your way into heaven, and I think actively we're all trying to be better every single day. If you're a Christian, when you mess up, and we all do it, and we all mess up. So you actively know, like, man, I gotta stop doing that. For me, it was the gluttony of eating and sitting there at nighttime and just
that was still my point. Like on the walk side of things, though, sometimes you don't because you're dealing with these things here that God has on you, and you can't take any more of that. And I was having a discussion with one of my kids about something that was in the Bible, and I was like, "Well, do you believe or not believe that's there?" And they were like, "Well, I believe it's there, but like, I don't really think that it's really a sin." And I was like, "But it says it is." And they said, "Yeah, but I don't feel conviction with it." And I was like, "Yeah, you're not going to feel conviction with every one of them. Like, you've got to go through some things. Just because you don't feel convicted just means that God's not working on that particular thing with you right now."
Yeah.
And I think that's where you've got to have mercy and love on everyone because we're all going through different things at different times.
Right.
We're all growing differently.
And also, it's when you all of a sudden, you see these people, they want to change their lifestyle. And they try to do it cold turkey. Now, some people it does work for. Whenever I went on Biggest Loser, I stopped everything cold turkey. I started working out every day.
Where did cold turkey come from, by the way?
I don't know. I do like cold turkey, though.
But he knows where to fuck.
I don't like warm turkey nor cold turkey, so.
You don't like turkey?
Not really.
You ain't American.
Is that an American thing? I feel like, I like apple pie. I eat a lot of apple pie.
I know that they don't have it in Australia.
That could probably be a whole episode within itself.
What my point of saying all this is this. We all are facing different things. And like you said, God might be working on this part of me right now. That doesn't mean there's not another part over here I need to change. But at this point in time in my life, this is the most pressing thing that I need to work on and change.
Yeah.
So if when you start working out and then it's like, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get up at 4 o'clock every single day, and you commit to all these things, and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap. In a weekend, you're like, this is so much stuff. But if you just say, you know what, I just want to start getting up at 4 a.m. and just getting up at 4 a.m. Start off with that. And then the next week, maybe say, you know, I'm going to get up. I'm going
It
to go
feels
for
like
a
a
walk.
much more bold move than
4 a.m.
I'm pretty sure I can commit to working out more than getting up at 4 a.m.
I'm just glad my alarm
Whatever
clock's
you wanna
not
go-
going
what-
off at 4 a.m.
Whatever you want to commit to first. If you want to commit to saying, hey, I'm going to start working out every day, or I'm going to work out 3 days a week, or whatever, you know, there's so many studies that show working out 3 days a week and taking off 4 days. If you're doing your compound movements and you're doing this, you need time for your body to heal. But now on those 3 days you work out, you got to go intense, and you got to get to those muscles, and you got to work out. You got to go through it. The days you recover are actually the day that you're building muscle. Whenever you're working out, you're breaking down the muscle.
Yeah.
So, but there's so many people it's like, I work out 7 days a week, never miss a day, blah, blah, blah. And I do this, and I go intense, and I do HIIT training. I'm like, cool. Well, you're probably not going to gain any muscle because you're never giving your body a chance to recover and rebuild that muscle that you're breaking down. And so it's just learning those things, but it works the same way with anything else we do. It's like, if you just tell me I'm going to go everything, I'm going to do it all, it's going to be great, you know, you're probably going to fizzle out. Not saying there's not the exception to the rule, but for the most part, people overcommit and then they realize like, man, that was too much for me. Whereas if they'd have done this thing first and then added in the next thing and everything, eventually you're doing it all within, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
You're doing everything you set out to do. For me, whenever I started, this weight loss thing, I committed. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start off, regardless if I work out 3 or 4 times. Normally it's 4 times a week, but here lately I've been doing more like 3 just because I want to give my body a chance to recover. And I felt great. The inflammation hasn't come back in my body, and the thing. So it's been a great deal. But I just committed. I'm like, I'm going to do this liver detox with my wife because it means something to her, and it's proven her protocol is working. And then on top of that, I'm going to commit to doing those 2 days of fasting every single week up until the 3 weeks is over. It's just a 21-day detox. And I did that, and I lost 29 pounds. Well, since then, I stay right there between 24 and 29 pounds. I bounce back and forth. But my clothes continue to get looser. I continue to feel better. I continue to be more mobile and all this other stuff. So it's like, I think so many times it's like you get that instant gratification. 30 pounds basically in 3 weeks was awesome. But then it was all of a sudden it was like, well, wait, that wasn't the point. Wasn't just to lose weight. It was to make my body feel better. So now if I did go and fast for 2 days, I would probably be in the 320s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you fast for 2 days, all the stomach, everything's going out of your stomach, everything else, you're going to lose weight, So it's been interesting to fight that struggle in my mind, even as a guy that's lost 250, 260, whatever pounds in my life, and kept it off and done well. It's been interesting to watch that struggle in my brain of like, yeah, but the scale's not moving, And I think just like we're talking with this, everybody's on a different part of their journey. Me as a guy that's been through this and been very successful at it, it's still a battle that I fight because I'm going to get on there. I'm going to judge myself by these things, where I do feel conviction for stuff. When we talk about, it was so funny, it hit us both literally the same week when he decided, you know what, I'm not going to drink anymore. And I was like, huh? He's like, I'm not going to drink anymore. He's like, I'm going to cut it out. He goes, it's going to be tough. He goes, because he quit for like 9 years or something like that, 10 years, something like that.
9, 7, 10.
I got 9.5, 9 goes, I got 10, sold American. But he quit, and then he slowly let it sneak back in, and was high functioning and handled it well. And then one day he just said, you know what? I didn't like the way I was on stage last night. I think I need to make a change. My thing was seeing pictures of myself going,
I don't like the way I look.
Got some fluff hanging over the edge of them overalls now. It's time to start, taking that off again. And it literally was just the conviction of that. Like, man, you got a responsibility to yourself. It ain't about everybody else to me. It ain't necessarily about the way I look to the world. It's about the way I view myself and the way I see myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last couple months of not drinking, it's hit me a little harder of the real reason. And I think it has more to do with the fact that you go through life, and almost everyone does this. You go through life pushing and ignoring either your body, ignoring your family, ignoring and focusing on certain things. And you think, I'm going to get here and then I'll do these things.
Right.
I'm going to get here and then I'll have the finances for this. I'm going to get here and then I'll have more time for my family. I'm going to get here and then I'm going to start working out more. And I started realizing, as you top over 40, your mind starts thinking a little bit different. You're going, oh, I'm likely halfway done with this. And and I'm definitely on the downhill slope. You've got aches and pains that you didn't feel before.
Fact.
You know,
What the hell did
and-
you do? I went to sleep. I don't know.
I don't know. I just woke up hurting, and must be my mattress. I don't know. Did you ever think that when you were 23?
Yeah.
Well, my mattress just sucks. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you slept in all sorts of positions at 23
I
on
need a
a
new
floor.
My Pillow.
on
I got to get the firm one.
Hey, that's a true story with me. I am ordering the firm.
I'm a firm pillow guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said the
My Pillow.
Do you have the My Pillow?
I got the My Pillow.
I got the My Pillow, but I got the medium, and I don't like
It's
it. I
too
need the
soft.
firm. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
too
I
I've
soft.
never heard anybody say they actually like their My Pillow.
Oh,
Well,
I
so
love
my
it.
dad
It's my
told me
it's my
about it.
favorite pillow I've ever had.
Listen, I was complaining about my neck, and my dad he was like, "Oh, it's like my night's sleep been so much better since I got the My Pillow," and it was that moment when he said it. I thought, "Damn, I'm old, aren't I? Crap. I'm actually interested in this. I'm already looking this thing up." Anyway, so where were we? So you always think that you're going to get to this other level, and I think that you get to a certain age and you start realizing like, oh, I need to get wherever I'm going in all aspects. And you know, whether that's deciding, you know, how much money do you need?
Yep.
Where how much are you actually working? Because you never really get to where you think you're going, especially when you know, I'm sure you've dealt with this in other areas. For us as artists, you had this vision of like,
Yeah.
you know, this arena.
You were going to be
you
George
know?
Strait. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, I've spent the last 25 years trying to accomplish this, and it hadn't happened.
Mhm.
Now, that's not to say it doesn't, but I can't live my life anymore waiting for some sort of grand thing to happen, or for me to have enough money in the bank account, or for me to have, you know, you have to start looking at things differently. And so I realized, I looked at it and went, what are the weaknesses in my life that seems to be affecting other areas?
Yeah.
And alcohol was that first thing that was like, well, that's calories that I don't need. It's it also makes me not as productive the night of, the day of, the morning of, after. And started looking at those things and going, I mean, it's bad enough for me to like pull myself away from a piece of pizza as it is, but you put a few drinks in me, ain't nothing pulling me away from pizza.
Yeah.
You know? And so realizing that, well, if I can get control of this one, let's knock this piece out of the way. Then once I get used to that, then we can start knocking some of these other pieces out of the way.
Yeah.
How do I achieve the best that I can be at all the talents and all the blessings that God's given me? How do I become the best at that, regardless of whatever I achieve in the world? You know, that's really the motivation for me.
Yeah.
Like, how do I get to being all that I can be right here in this moment, rather than hanging my hat on, well, when this happens and when that happens.
Yeah, and I think we do that because, I mean, obviously, I'm always going to be a dreamer. I'm always going to be, and I don't even consider myself a dreamer. I'm a doer. You know what I mean? If I have a dream, it's like, well, I'm going to have to go out and make this kid book. It's going to cost you $5,000. Well, I'm going to have to figure out how to make it happen. You know, he's the same way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think there are, you know, that's what people have to realize.
Yeah, and then people are like, so are you going to make any money from that?
Maybe.
Well, I don't know. I had a vision to do it. I didn't have a vision of how I was going to make the money from it.
No, but I think that so many people say, I'm a dreamer. I'm like, yeah, but are you doing anything? And I think for me, I'm always going to be the kind of person that's like, if I get passionate about it, I'm like, you know what, I'd like to do that. Then I start doing it. Right now, as we speak, I'm having a cartoon made for my Christmas song that I just recorded yesterday. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I got online and I started looking at stuff. I met this, you know, guy from South Africa that does animation, loved his animation, started talking to him. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, he's like, yeah, he goes, I can do that for you for $1,000.
$1,000.
And what's
I'm gonna
even
put out a cartoon a month for $1,000.
and what's
that
even
sounds-
better, and it's the whole song. It's like it's going to be a music video.
Then
Wait
I
till
don't have to make myself
Wait.
better. I can make my cartoon the best man.
wait till I show you this. It's only it's you know, it's a 3-minute, you know, cartoon music video, basically cartoon of me doing a Christmas song. But he's like 3D, you know. But my point is I went out there and I researched it. I just said, man, I'd like to do that. It wasn't impossible. It cost $200,000 a minute to do a
You
cartoon.
took action.
But I was like, man, there's got to be some way out there to figure it out. Well, I went out there, found this company, thought they were really great, started talking to him on the phone. I told him straight up, I was like, I'm not going to pay you until I have the product. You can put a proof over it or whatever you need to do, but I'm not going to give you $2,000 or $1,000 or whatever to get started on this project. I was like, you know, you have to show me that it's going to be there because I don't know you.
Yeah.
You don't, you know, you're, you know, so I'm like, about all of a sudden, he produces the first character from my cartoon that I created, Larry Superball, in 3D, turn in a whole video showing him. and everything else. I'm like, all right. And so I gave him a $250 deposit, and now he's working on the rest of it, you know? And so now it's like, you know, then I find out, which is something I was going to talk to you about today, he can take my book, and for $1,000, he can animate in 2D the exact book. Like he can take it and make those characters like literally move across the screen and do all this other stuff. You know, and like but there, where he's at in South Africa, $1,000 is like $100,000.
Yeah.
So it's you know, helping him, doing great things for him and his family. It's also giving me a product that here in America I can utilize for my social media, for my brand, for everything that I'm doing, that I can then turn into something I can sell, that I can afford to do. But my whole life I thought I can't do that because I can't afford it. You know, but when you go out there and you start researching, you start looking, you're like, man, let me go see if I can find a way. And I think there's so many times that we think there is no way, and then we quit doing those things. Now, I do agree with him on what he's saying about.
I kind of wish that I felt that way sometimes, because most of the time, every single thing that comes my way, I'm like, there's got to be a way to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, if anything, if you want to find out how I waste more of my time, it's me figuring out things I'm not going to do, just figuring out, can you do that? Okay, you can do that. I don't really want to do that.
My favorite thing with him, too,
I found all that out.
He'll be like, Vinny, you think we could do this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. He goes, and then 5 minutes later, 5 hours later, he'll send me a full-on business plan with everything researched and all this other stuff. And he goes, what'd you do? I was like, well, I just called this over here and did this, and I got this going for us. And he's like, I spent the last 5 hours putting together this perfect plan, and you made 3 phone calls, you know.
I need to make sure that it works on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll move if it works on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need to make sure that my wife's okay with it, and the best way to prove it to her is paper.
On paper, yeah. She's very analytical. She gonna study stuff.
Yeah.
For me, I'm just like, let's go, yeah. And then I start going. I'm like, crap. That's gonna be a lot more than I thought it was gonna be. Money, time, you know. And that's the biggest thing I think for me. It comes down to I have to. And this is what I've had to do. We have so many ideas, and we've put a lot of them into motion, and some of them have turned out amazing, and some of them haven't made any money for us, but they've made almost $1 million for charity, you know? But one of the things I love about it is we do sit there and we do suss it out. And if we're passionate enough about it, that's when we decide, is it going to get some of our time and attention? You know, but I don't mind the fact that we do take the time to suss it out, to look at it, and then put it in the list of all these things that we're trying to do and say, that's worth my time.
Yeah. Where does it fit?
So I'm going to go do this. And for me, it's like right now we're looking at a couple different things. I've been blessed to have, you know, an investor come in on some of the things that I'm doing with my music. So I've got the ability right now to say, hey, I'm going to go and try this Spotify thing. And if it works, then I can report back to my other friends and say, hey, this is actually a good deal and it's legit and it worked and it was great. And it's, you know, promotional tools that Spotify offers you. But you wonder, like, man, do I want to take that, you know, $2,000 risk, you know, on something that may or may not work, because we've done it with country radio for years and spent money and done all this. It's like, but I have the ability right now to go test it out, and then I can report back to Jared and say, hey, man, it was worth it. I gained 2,500 new followers or whatever on my Spotify or my YouTube or whatever. And so it's interesting to just see as we're evolving, as we're changing, kind of like what we was talking about earlier, what the next step is. So on this journey we're in, whether it's, you know, turning into being a stadium act, or if it's just the fact that we're going to take the future, you know, of music and help out new artists, these younger guys that are coming in, we're learning along the way. So to take that back to the original message, because I know we got, you know, sidetracked here because we always do, but when you're on your walk, when you're trying to, you know, be a Christian, I think one of the worst things that can happen is for people that have been in the walk for a long time is to come and constantly correct you on every single thing. What they need to do, and what I think is the best thing you can do, is catch people doing something right.
Yeah, but I also question when you say, when you're starting your walk, and then someone who's been in the walk comes in, but have they really been in the walk? Because I feel like they should be wiser to how to handle this. If you've truly been in this walk,
I agree
you
with
should
that.
understand how to handle things a little bit more. I mean, when I look at my children, it's clear to me to see over the last 5-10 years the ways that I've done it wrong, and the ways that I'm trying to do better, and the way that I constantly bring up to my wife of, like, the most common thing I say to her when we're dealing with the children or talking about something is going, yeah, but what would Jesus have said in this moment? How would he have put this? Because you just didn't hear anything about him screaming and yelling at people or getting mad because they didn't understand. The reality is, my job as a parent and your job as a teacher or a mentor or anything else is to lay facts in front of someone in the most loving, kind way that you can, in the most effective way. And I've yet to see anything be effective when you're yelling at somebody.
You know,
Fact.
and this is something I've just learned, something I've just learned with my kids, and as I'm becoming a better dad, is if I put as much time and energy into when they do something right as I do when they're doing stuff wrong,
That's
it
big.
changes everything for me. Like Jagger is my best buddy in the whole world. And I've always been kind of with my son, I'm way different than I am with my daughter, and y'all can call me sexist or whatever, but my daughter basically holds me in the palm of her hand and goes, you know. But with my son, it was like, hey, boy, you better listen to what I'm saying, you know. And I always correct him as soon as he starts doing anything. Hey, boy, stop that. You don't do that. Hey, get over here now. You know, and I'm very almost militant in the fact that I want him to understand, like, you're going to respect me. You're going to respect the other elders in the house. And he does. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, how often when he does something wrong, I'm like, hey, good job, buddy. But I'm like, hey, man, that was a freaking great job. I'm so proud of you. Like, if I put as much energy into praising him when he does the good things as I do getting on to him when he does the wrong things, I've learned that makes him want to do good more.
Yeah.
So if you constantly badger them about the things they're doing wrong and they get your attention when they're doing wrong, they're going to do more wrong because they're like, hey, that's when I get my dad's attention. So what I've realized
Without
is that,
realizing it.
they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's natural. And for me, a lot of it's come from listening to podcasts, listening to motivational speaking, listening to parent stuff, and realizing like, man, that makes sense to me that if I'm constantly, when he does something right, I'm like, dude, I'm so proud of you. You did such a great job on this. He's probably going to do that again. So I've tested it out over the last few days, actually. He went and cleaned up his room one day, and I had to literally be like, dude, go clean your room. Go clean your room. Go clean your room. Why is your room not clean yet? I was like harping on it. And finally he cleans the room. I go up there, I was like, dude, I'm so proud of you, man. I said, you put away all these clothes. You did this and this and this. Man, let's spend some time. And I sit there with him, and he loves reading the Marvel books and stuff where we go to bed, sometimes DC, depending on which books he's got. He loves Spider-Man. So I'll sit there and I read the books with him, and I tell him, he's like, Dad, can we watch TV tonight? I'm like, man, I really don't want us to watch TV tonight, dude. I just want to lay here. I'll tell you some bedtime stories. And he loves it. He'll be like, all right, I'll say, what do you want me to tell you a story about? He'll like, why don't you tell me a story about if Spider-Man and Superman had to fight Venom, And so I'll make up this whole story about Spider-Man and Superman fighting Venom and how he gets through. And all of a sudden another character jumps in, and he's like, oh. And the next thing about, Dad, tell me that story again. I'm like, I don't remember what I said, But spending that time with him and rewarding him and catching him doing something right has already made a huge difference in the way that he reacts, the way he does stuff. So now it's when I say do something, I'm like, hey, man, you need to go and do this. Well, then and of course, it's nowhere near like the first time I say it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will be one day, but it is definitely getting a lot easier to say, hey, you need to go clean your room. And he'll go up there and clean the room, and I'll go up there, dude, it looks great. Even if it don't look great.
Yeah.
Because trust me, sometimes I'm like, I open the closet, I'm like, oh, there's all the mess, But it's gotten a lot better. Now, Harley, I don't know. She only listens to Jared. So
I think that's really valid though, because even if you were to confront him in that room and be like, man, the room looks really, really good, but can you put these away too?
Yeah.
That's still a completely different feel.
Yeah, he feels like he didn't do good enough.
What do you mean? You put it all in the closet. You didn't do any, like, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And it works the same way with your spouse. I mean, like,
I was about to say the same thing.
well, say it, because I'm pretty sure me and Vinny spent the entire time talking.
No,
here.
I was just going to, I mean, the same thing can ring true for adults.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you look at it from an entrepreneur standpoint, 9 times out of 10, you're telling somebody what they did wrong rather than what they did very well. So,
yeah. Actually,
same application.
Whenever I was a general manager at Sonic, I read a book called The 1 Minute Manager. And one of the first things in there was like, catch somebody doing something right. Because when you give them praise and all this, and they know you've been proud of them for something,
I mean,
you can't come right back to Sonic again.
well, no. It's just that so I had this opposite conversation recently about some employees, because you also sometimes, I try really hard to make sure anybody that's working for me that I tell them, how great a job they're doing.
Yeah.
And I noticed that then I tried to correct this guy and sit down and talk about what wasn't going right. And he just wanted to bring up all the times I had told him how great he was. And I was like,
yeah.
Well,
but
that didn't really work. I was like, what?
I could see that happening too. For me, which I was dealing with a lot younger, I was dealing with.
It was a
kids
different demographic.
Yeah,
too.
I mean,
it's
kids,
a little
but-
different. No, I mean, it's just a little different these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People
'cause
very
that was
much
15, 20 years ago. So.
People very much feel like, and it blew my mind because it just got rolled right back on me of like, well, if I'm so bad, then why did you say this and this and this? And it's like,
right.
I was trying to be nice. I didn't want to
because you
wake
did
up
good
and tell
on
you
those things,
sucked
but
every
you
day.
still suck over here on these things.
Yeah.
Anyways, you know, I think this is a good place to kind of, you know, because we're gonna do some more stuff, but end it like this. If you're in your walk with God, you know, Jesus, and you've been out there crushing it for a long time, and you see somebody come in that's on fire for God, I like to say like ignorance on fire. They're not going to know everything. They're not going to get everything right. They're not going to say everything the right way, but they're on fire. They're excited right now. Don't extinguish their fire with your vast knowledge of how much you know more than them. Help keep their fire lit and then teach them along the way. But going online as a pastor and berating somebody that is openly saying, I love Jesus Christ, he's saved my life, he's my Lord and Savior. Going on there and berating that, to me, it fights the opposite, because you're going to get people saying, see, why would I even want to do that? Because that guy's still judging me, even though I felt like I was getting better, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
Well, you know, I thought you were going to bring into this as a metaphor of that path. It kind of got me of like, if you're walking this path, shouldn't you really only be talking to other people that start following you on that path?
yeah.
If
Good
I'm
point.
on this path and these other people are on this path over there, do I really have time to go over there?
Yeah. Well,
Like-
you don't understand their perspective. You haven't been through what they've been through, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's just my note to say, go out there. To be a good Christian is to be a good Christian. It doesn't mean that you never correct somebody or help somebody, but in the forum and the way that you do it, it can be way different, because you need to take time with that person. Like, hey, I love the fact that you're on fire for Jesus. Let me educate you on this. And you know, and of course saying, let me educate you can kind of sound condescending, but let me help you, you know, get a better grasp
so
of
you
the
know
Bible.
the way.
Yeah.
If you only speak in metaphors, which Jesus did a lot, that'll keep you from saying stupid crap, though.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've thought about that, and it took me too long to figure out the metaphor, and then they'd already left.
Yeah.
I want to double down on a nugget that he dropped earlier about
Ooh, I
arguing
love chicken
with,
nuggets. Yeah.
Man, Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets. But when you and Jen would get in an argument, you guys started turning to the Bible. It wasn't about you being right or her being right. It's let's see what it says right here.
Right.
So it takes the right and wrong out of it. It becomes biblical. So that was a nice little nugget.
If you want to make love last, put Jesus in it. Okay.
I
Y'all,
thought he was just going to end with you. We don't make love.
I know. I didn't
Read
know
the Bible.
I didn't know where it was headed.
yeah. I mean, you gotta put God first if you want to make love last. Bam. Look at that. You gotta,
More than 2 minutes.
Yeah. So this is a Refined Life podcast. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends about it. Give us 5 stars. Give us 6.5 stars, 3, 14, 45 million stars. Give us all the stars you can find. Even the stars don't shine like you. Anyways, we love you. Come back to the Refined Life podcast. I'm Bigg Vinny, Jared Blake, Jeff Suter, and this is our friend Casper. He's been with us ever since yesterday was Halloween. Hey, Casper. Oh, yeah, dude, that's hilarious. You always make the funniest faces. I see dead people.
What a weirdo.